a devoted fan, and a plugged-in reporter. There is no better way to talk about hoops than that. Mia O'Brien and Mitch Northam have you covered for the W, the NCAA, Unrivaled, and anything else that involves a ball and a backboard. This is the Women's Basketball Podcast.
And it's a special, once again, Sunday night broadcast recorded edition of the Women's Basketball Podcast. Welcome in, Mia O'Brien. USA Today's Mitchell Northam. Apologies that I missed last week, although I do have my Sun Devils gear on from my trip out west. Is this also a nod to Molly Miller?
Molly Miller?
Perhaps Mitch Northam. Maybe we'll dive into that a little bit later on this little program. Shout out to Lindsay Gibbs of CBS Sports for sitting in for yours truly last week. Loved the episode that you guys did, Mitch, and looking forward to another exciting hour now of counting down some of the biggest storylines between college hoops, the WNBA, Unrivaled, and much, much more. We are recording this on Sunday, February 22nd, as we begin the recording of this little show at 4:05 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Clemson has just knocked off Duke and ended the nation's longest win streak in the Power Four conferences. Mitch is live in Columbia, South Carolina, following the Gamecocks demolishing of Ole Miss in high noon prime time on the Mouse. And so there's a lot to dive into. We're going to start, Mitch, with the game you're at. Then we're going to go to the game that we both just watched simultaneously live on each of our respective televisions. Yours at the Fieldhouse up in there in little old Columbia, South Carolina, and the nice chamber that you are recording today's show from. But let's start with the game that you were just at, even though I know your emotions are with Sean Poppy, who I hope is appreciating the intro to today's episode, because we're both still riding the high of watching Clemson knock off Duke. That's number 2 in the starting 5, but number 1 is where you are at. The final score, South Carolina 85, Ole Miss 48. Do we have to revisit our Final Four predictions and include Dawn Staley's Gamecocks?
Certainly. I think there's a case for that. I think as I wrote last year, Dawn Staley is inevitable, especially as March approaches. And, we were in the post-game press conference just now, and this is South Carolina's 5th consecutive. So today they clinched a share of the SEC regular season title, which would be their 5th consecutive one, and 10th in the last 13 years. And I think that's just astonishing. We've talked a lot about the strength of conferences. Hello, Big East. And the SEC is the toughest one out there. And when you talk about just like how good the SEC is this year, where I think potentially like 4 of your top 8 seeds might come from the SEC, like it's pretty impressive. When you talk about South Carolina and Texas and Vanderbilt and LSU and also Kentucky and Oklahoma, who beat South Carolina earlier this year. I do think this is one of Dawn Staley's best coaching jobs. I think just like from a takeaways perspective, just from this game, I think there was a time a couple weeks ago earlier this season where Medina Okat was having some struggles, wasn't really herself. Dawn Staley kind of gave her a reset and, was bringing her off the bench for a couple games there. Now she's starting again, and you can really see Medina Okat playing with confidence. And Tanaya Latson said after the game, when Medina's playing like that, we know we're going to win. And not only was Medina Okat dominating in the paint today, she hit 3 3-pointers, which was incredible. Coach Yo said in the post-game press conference, when she started hitting them threes, I said, blank. I knew the game was over.
Why only fill out 1 bingo square for the Medina Okat 3 when you can fill out 3 bingo squares, right?
That's right. So I think South Carolina is certainly like they should be viewed as a contender to get back to the Final Four for what would be, the 5th straight year as well, if my math is right. And they should be the favorite to win the SEC tournament coming up here in Greenville, South Carolina. And this is a really good team with really, really good guards. And now they got Medina Okat also playing well. Turnabes, our friend from France, also providing a little, punch off the bench here lately, had 2 blocks, 3 rebounds, and 6 points in 14 minutes today. So they're starting to get some production from that depth that hasn't always been there this season, you can make the kind of cliche argument like they're peaking at the right time.
I'm glad that Turnabees has gotten the upgrade from Alicia T to her actual pronunciation of her last name. Two other notes for me, because we're going to focus for number one in this week's starting five on the South Carolina of it all, because don't worry, Coach Yo, we're going to get to you in the beef. Needless to say, after some of the comments that have been made both in post-game pressers as well as online. But I think another thing to point out, number one, to the O-cut of it all, the fact that Joyce Edwards had 21 points in this game, which may sound ho-hum, but the fact that the front court between her with 21 points and then with O-cut with 17 of her own, that certainly suggests to me that this is a team that can win with its forwards as much as arguably the best starting three backcourt in the nation. And so that was always our question. If you're not getting the production out of your guards, will you survive if teams are taking away Joyce Edwards? And right now it looks like South Carolina is proving that the answer to that is yes. I'd also be remiss, and maybe this is of course just the McNamara bias of it all in my household, Mitch, but the fact that Maddie McDaniel played 22 minutes in this game, the fact that all five players who came off the bench played double-digit minutes. They rotated 10 different players in, did Dawn Staley. And while it maybe doesn't come off that way in the final score, or even for you sitting actually in that field house watching this game, the fact that, unlike some folks up in South Bend, perhaps, Dawn Staley does have bodies, and it just took some time to develop trust in them and for them to develop trust in the system and trust in Dawn. I think that that is a big development, if for nothing else, to give that starting five a blow here and there.
For sure. I definitely think that, yeah, like, like I said, the depth is really coming on, and I think South Carolina is hitting things at the right stride. And, all their contributors are kind of playing well. And, they did a lot to kind of get through a lot of those injuries they were dealing with early on this season. It's all working out for them.
It's all working out for them. But let's not bury the lead here, Mitch. I look at you somewhere in some sort of dungeon in Columbia, South Carolina right now, and you are just itching to discuss the 17-game win streak of the Duke Blue Devils coming to an end at the hands of Sean Poppy and the Clemson Tigers. Final score, 53-51 from Little John Coliseum in little old South Carolina. Or should I say little old Clemson, South Carolina. I'm still jacked up about this one because, Mitch, I said we should have pressed record while we were both watching this game live. An exciting finish. Walk us through it and what it means for Clemson's NCAA tournament hopes.
Yeah, I know that some of our friends at the ACC and at Clemson are going to listen to this, and my bad. I should have came to this game in South Carolina today, not the blowout we had here in Columbia. This was an awesome finish. We were watching this, live here.
Mitch is yelling like, "Get it! She got it! She got it!" live as I'm like doing like three other things here.
I let out the bang. We had Riley Nelson of Duke hit a three-pointer with 9 seconds left that put Duke up by 1. And then we had Hannah Cohn hit a three-pointer with a beautiful assist from Mia Moore. Hit the three-pointer with 3 seconds left to put Clemson ahead by 2. And then Duke kind of fumbles away possession on the last couple seconds there with the chance to win the game or send it into OT. And so Clemson wins. Clemson is now 10-6 in the ACC, 19-9 overall. But this is a huge win. This is a quad one win for them. They were on the bubble. This is a team that was ranked in the top 10 in net. Again, they're the only team in the ACC to beat Duke this season. Duke hasn't lost since December. I don't think they've lost since that LSU game in early December. So Duke's long win streak now comes to an end. Clemson gets probably the marquee signature win that they needed to really get on the better side of the bubble, or perhaps even off the bubble and just in the field. We'll see kind of how that plays out. I'll have to do the math on my bracketology this week, but I feel really good about them. And I feel really good about Virginia now, who we can get into as well.
Yes, massive monster day of upsets in the ACC. Again, we're glad we're recording this after the 12 o'clock and 2 o'clock windows because that's where the Atlantic Coast Conference went berserko. Let's stay with this game with Clemson. I think the fact that Hannah Cohn is the one who hits that three came with Sean Poppy from Chattanooga. And I would argue this is, I don't even think we need to argue. Is this the biggest win of Sean Poppy's tenure at Clemson?
Yes, absolutely. I think earlier this year, they beat NC State for the first time in almost 2 decades. And yeah, now you get a win over Duke at home. I don't know when's the last time they've beaten Duke either. To be honest with you, I would have to do the math and look it up, or maybe our friend Andrew Kopinski, SID extraordinaire, can provide me with a stat. Yeah, I think certainly just considering the circumstances, like where Clemson is in this season, teetering on the bubble, really fighting hard to get back into the NCAA tournament for what would be, I think, the first time since 2019. And to get this win to really elevate their resume and put them in that position is a really good thing for them.
Shout out to Andrew as well, because we'd be remiss if we didn't give him and the entire Clemson athletics department a shout out for the very special halftime performance that occurred at today's game. But do tell Mitch, this is also the part where maybe producer Dimitri edits in a little bit of video. If so, play that music, Dimitri.
We had Carolina Mike.
In the flesh. Is he the reason that Duke finally goes down in ACC play? Because I think it is.
I think we have to give credit to Carolina Mike.
We give all the credit to Carolina Mike.
You had $150,000. Would you beat Duke?
There it is. It's as simple as that. Mitch alluded to it. Clemson far from the only underdog to win on Sunday in the ACC. Let's head up to Louisville, where
I have some stats from.
We have stats. Let's get to some stats before we get to Louisville, Virginia, another big upset.
Okay, first time in 25 years, Clemson has reached 10 wins in ACC play. So that's since the 2001 season. So that was like I said, 2001 when Jim Davis was the head coach. Last win over an AP ranked top 10 opponent since 2022. Clemson's upset win against Duke is the first ranked win of the 25-26 season and third ranked win of the Coach Poppy era. This is also the Tigers' ranked win is the highest ranked win and the third home ranked win in the Coach Poppy era. Clemson snapped Duke's 17-game win streak, the only ACC squad to defeat Duke this season. And
I would think the win over NC State was another one of those 3 ranked wins, yes?
Was NC State ranked when Clemson beat them? I don't know.
Okay, I thought they were. So that's why I was going to say 2 of the 3 coming this year would certainly be an impressive number on the ledger, again, for not only a friend of the pod in Sean Poppy, but also someone who has a top 10 recruiting class coming to South Carolina.
Things are cooking in Clemson.
Yes, needless to say. Hey, let's stay in the ACC. Final score up in Kentucky. Virginia 74, number 8 Louisville 72. This one was on the CW on the Kim Mulkey watchability index. I saw it was all the way on the right-hand side. Didn't matter that they buried this game on the CW thinking that Jeff Walls and friends were just going to pummel Virginia, because the Cavs, the Woohoos, they find a way. Get to 19 wins. We have had questions about job security in Charlottesville because of the investment from alums. They're putting their money where their mouth is, though, in this one, where, yes, to be fair, I do think when you look at Louisville's side of this, they came out flat. They scored 14 points in the first quarter, 16 in the second. And while, yes, this wasn't the highest scoring game in the first half to begin with, it looked like, from what I could see popping in and out of this game and from what I read from reporters who were boots on the ground, the Cardinals, much like the Kim Mulkey watchability index, thought that they were just going to have Virginia roll over and hand them this game, and that was not the case.
Yeah, I think Louisville dug themselves into too big of a hole to get out of. I think Virginia went up by 11 or 12 points in the first half. I was kind of just keeping an eye on this one from press row here in Columbia. But yeah, I think when you talk about like what this win means for Virginia, they now have 11 wins in the ACC, similar to Clemson. This is a quad 1 win over a team that was in the top 10 in the net. This is also a quad 1 road win, so there's a little bit more value there. And I think for Virginia, like we've talked about before, if they didn't make the NCAA tournament this year, I think you could have seen them potentially make a change. I had Virginia in the field, but still on the bubble as one of those last 4 teams in the last bracketology I did at USA Today. I think now you add this to it, they're in safely in the field off the bubble, maybe as like a 10 or a 9 seed or something like that. So I think, Coach Mox is safe and sound. And this is a huge win for Virginia. And I think culminated you just talk about like all the work that they've put in over the past couple of years to revive this program from Tina Thompson nearly killing it. Like, to be frank, like that program was in a disastrous state after the Tina Thompson era. And, I mentioned on Twitter the other day, like somebody was talking about Corey Close and Kiki Rice. There's a alternate universe out there somewhere where Corey Close gets the Virginia job. And back when that was open, I think in 2018, and Kiki Rice comes with her to Virginia because Kiki Rice was being recruited by Virginia, and Kiki Rice is from the DMV. So like, you can imagine a world where Corey Close and Kiki Rice are doing what they're doing at UCLA at Virginia now. Obviously, that didn't happen. They end up hiring Tina Thompson, who drives the program into the dirt. And now Coach Mox has revived it, and I feel pretty good about them making the NCAA tournament this year.
And shout out to Romy Levy, who not only had the clutch 3 with 13 seconds to go, but also grabbed Louisville's missed 3 at the horn. Again, 74-72, Virginia with the massive upset dub. Let's move along from the ACC. I almost wanted Mitch to give kind of a little bit of a primer when it comes to some of the mid-majors and the missteps that they may have made this week. That is going to open up the door for Virginia and Clemson to be squarely in the field. But we're going to get to that last call. We're going to put a bow on the show a little bit later, but we are hitting the biggest scores of today on this fine Sunday, as well as throughout the last week in women's basketball. And in looking at the last week, we can't go any further without addressing the messy, fun conference that is the Big 12. I'm not even going to give you guys a single game to talk about. Like, I'm just going to ask Mitch plain and simple. After Colorado upset number 20 Texas Tech, who we thought was the class of the Big 12, somehow, some way, the Greenbrier 5 continues to travel. They absolutely thump the Cowgirls down in Stillwater over the weekend, despite Mitch's pick and making money with Mitch. We'll get to that as well a little bit later. Iowa State, TCU, I know you just tipped off, so unfortunately we can't really react to that game. Who knows if TCU lays a leg, Audie Crooks and friends make their way back into the conversation for the Big 12 crown. A long-winded way of saying, Mitch, if you had to pick one team from the Big 12 who you'd say, you know what, that's a second weekend team, maybe even a team that makes it to the Elite Eight, I trust them. Who is that team and why?
I would have told you it was TCU, but they're losing to Iowa State right now by almost double digits. And so I think, like West Virginia is a team that is playing consistently well for the most part. They've won 8 of their last 10 games now. There's a question of, will they get into the top 16? Won't they? I don't know if that matters. I think they can win a 5 versus 4 matchup on the road. I like the prospect of West Virginia making it to the second weekend. I think TCU is still probably a second weekend team as well. But I have to talk about Iowa State because Addie Brown is back.
Bingo.
Injury. And this is a different team when Addie Brown is in the lineup. Before they lost to Baylor in the game that she got hurt in, they had not lost a game all season. And then, they go through their ups and downs, and we see the emergence of Jada Williams a little bit. But now she's back, and I think that takes attention off of Jada. I think it takes attention off of Audie Crooks. And now you have a true 3-headed monster again. And, Iowa State is not going to be able to play their way into the top 16. But, if they're in the tournament as like an 8 seed or a 7 seed, like that's not – if they're an 8, especially, if I'm one of these number 1 seeds, I don't want to see Iowa State on the other side of my bracket in my opening round regional. If they're a 7, if I'm a 2 seed, I don't want to see them. If they're a 6, if I'm a 3 seed, I don't want to see them.
I was just going to say, that's my big – if I'm one of those teams that's on the 3 or the 4 line, I do not want to see Iowa State make a run at the Big 12 tournament, even if they don't win the whole thing. Because if they get to the 6 or the 7 line and they are in that 3-4 pod, look out. They are one of those teams that absolutely could knock, or excuse me, not the 6 or the 7 line. I just want to make a 6-7 joke. The 5 or the 6 line. If they get there in a 4-5 game, I don't care if you're the home team. I'm taking those 3. I'm taking Iowa State, who was one of the hottest teams in the country before Addie Brown's injury.
Yeah, even in a 7-3 game, or math is hard. 7-2, I guess it would be
7-2, and then a 6-3, and then a 4-5.
Yeah. So if they're a 7 seed and they get Texas, like we've talked about Texas's inability to make 3-pointers. Like, if Iowa State just jumps all over them and they can't stop Audie Crooks, and Iowa State's also making a bunch of threes, I don't know, man. Like, yeah, but that's, if I'm a higher seed, like, I don't want to see Iowa State healthy. If they got to stay healthy, that's the key, especially if they're coming off making a run in Kansas City at the Big 12 tournament.
Like we said, it's all about peaking at the right time. Want to shout out Addie Brown, by the way, after missing 11 games with that undisclosed injury. Bill Fenley literally told reporters it was still the same situation when they asked for an update. And then later that afternoon, Addie Brown tweets out, "Think it's about time to retire the notebook. See you tomorrow, Cyclone Nation." Like, that was just so epic. Like, I saw Tommy Birch tweet out, like, yeah, same old, same per Bill. And then like 2 hours later, Addie's like, "I'm back. I'm coming back." And it's obviously made a massive statement in her return since returning. And, on February 18th, when she came back, she was crying in the post-game presser, only played 20 minutes, had 6 points, 7 boards, 6 assists, and a block. And that's where you look at it and you're like, yes, there are nights where she's the second leading scorer behind Audie Crooks, but it's the definition of glue is what Addie Brown is. And I think that the reason that I agree with you in that who's the one team, if healthy, I trust in the Big 12, it's Iowa State. It's because I don't know if you can look at any other team in the Big 12 and say consistently, if all of their big three are healthy, I know who they are. And I know they can hang with teams in the SEC and the Big 10, quite like Iowa State, despite the fact that they played a cupcake non-conference schedule. But I digress.
Yeah, as far as getting into the second weekend, Iowa State, TCU, and West Virginia would be the teams I trust the most to get there. I don't really believe in Baylor.
And I want to, by the way, which remind the folks, where's College Game Day headed next week?
A Baylor at TCU. They will be in Fort Worth, Texas.
And so I want to believe in both of those outfits, but they've both been so up and down of late that I just can't bring myself to do so. And when Baylor does win, 9 times out of 10, it feels like it's a crazy Talia Scott end of game sequence for a 3 or some other heart palpitating finish. And that is, it's very exciting. It makes for great highlights on SportsCenter. But at the same time, I don't believe that that has the same consistency and carryover as what Iowa State was doing prior to Addie Brown's injury.
I think if Texas Tech had kept their status as a top 4 seed and they were going to host, I would feel better about them. And, there's still a feel-good story. It's still a great accomplishment for them to get to the NCAA tournament this year. I just don't know about them going on the road and beating, insert SEC team or insert Big Ten team, in the opening weekend sites.
The 5th game of this week's starting 5 has just gone final, although this one team was going to be in the starting 5 regardless of if this game wrapped up before we finished recording. Final score from Norman, Oklahoma. The Sooners 100. Killikim's Tennessee Volunteers still somehow ranked in the AP Top 25.
Not after tomorrow morning.
How are they? Okay, so where do we want to start, Mitch? Do we want to start with it's a 7-point loss, which actually doesn't look as awful compared to some of the recent results for the Lady Vols. This was a 4-point game with about 4 minutes to go when we started recording. So credit to Tennessee for hanging in there, especially when they didn't have a starter in Janiah Barker make the trip to Norman. And that maybe is the most logical place to start because I think the fight is there from this Vols team today comparatively to some other outings as their coach has made sure we have documented on this podcast over the last few weeks and on other outlets as well across the country. And Andrea Carter certainly had some things to say about her alma mater during College Game Day on Sunday morning. So, hey, Tennessee, I don't know what to tell you outside of Mitch told us, and it was funny because I was listening to last week's episode of you and Lindsay, and it went back to our episode from the week before automatically on my Spotify. And you said, well, when you look at Tennessee's schedule, you say, okay, fine. You got boat raced by UConn. You get boat raced by South Carolina. You'll beat Missouri. You'll beat Texas A&M.
No, they will not, apparently.
Beat Texas A&M. So where do you want to start? Like, there's a lot to get into here, even beyond just today's result.
So first, I want to just throw some water on some angry Tennessee fans by just saying, number one, this is fans across the nation, because I've had a lot of people ask me, like, is there a chance Tennessee doesn't make the NCAA tournament? No. Tennessee,
they were still somehow in the AP top 25, which I still don't understand, but continue, Mitch.
Even if Tennessee loses out and loses in the first round of the SEC tournament, they've stacked too many good wins. Their resume is too good to miss the field. Like, I'm looking at it now, and they're still 22 in net. They're still 26 in WAB. They are 7-8 in quad 1 and quad 2 games. As long as you're in the 20s and the 30s in net and WAB, you're going to be in the NCAA tournament field. And they're still in the 20s in both. So there's no chance of them missing March Madness. The second thing that I will say, to throw some hot water, cold water, I guess, on the Tennessee.
Maybe hot, because some people really think that Kim should be in hot water. Continue.
Kim Caldwell is not getting fired this year. She just signed a extension last spring and got a raise that makes her one of the sport's $1 million coaches. So her base salary is over $1 million. So, like, you know, I think her deal runs until 2030. That would be a very, very pricey and very expensive buyout. And I think it would also be an ego hit to Danny White, who made this hire and handed her this extension. And he will be the one making the decision here. And I just don't see that happening. Tennessee is also still paying Kelly Harper, by the way. Now that's at a reduced, like, half salary rate. But she had some years left and they still got to pay her. So I don't see that happening. She's not getting fired, and they're still going to make the tournament. However, having said all that, I think we are heading towards a Tennessee offseason where you're going to see a staff shakeup, yes, and a roster shakeup, yes, because things just have to change here. And I mean, one of their assistants might get a head coaching job. We'll see about that. But I think you're going to see some other changes elsewhere as well. Whatever, I think I've said this on the podcast before, but whatever Kim Caldwell is selling this year, the players are not buying it. You can see it in the body language on the bench when she talks in the huddle, from the players. Whatever she's selling, they're not buying it. They don't believe in her right now. I don't think those two sides trust each other right now. I don't think the player and the coach, I don't think there's a good relationship there right now. And so you're going to have to shake some things up. So I think we're going to see a lot of portal movement from Tennessee this year when we get into the offseason, the day after the national championship game when the portal opens. And I think you're going to see some staff changes, and because this has to change. This is still Tennessee. So, like, while I say she's not getting fired this year, things have to get better next year.
Just ask Vic Schaefer. He'll tell you, because you got to walk a mile in Kim's shoes, because she is coaching at one of 3 blue bloods that has been at the cream of the crop of the sport since the 1970s. And those 3 blue bloods are Texas, Tennessee, and Stanford. Right. UConn and South Carolina don't exist. It's those 3. Don't you forget, Mitch.
Oh, Vic Schaefer.
We're gonna talk about Vic a little bit later. Don't worry. I made some room for Vic in the rundown. Continue.
That's where I'm at with Tennessee right now. Is like I think this season is just a wrap. Like
it is.
I don't see Tennessee making it to the second weekend of the tournament. Like they did last year when they went in and upset Ohio State. I would be kind of surprised if they made the SEC quarterfinals, which would mean I think they would have to win 2 games, because I'm pretty sure they're going to be a Wednesday team at the SEC tournament. I would have to look at the full standings and kind of map that out. But it's not good. It's not good there right now. I think this season, like it is what it is, and you're probably going to lose in the first or second round of the tournament. And then you got to figure some things out. You got to figure out what changes you need to make this situation better. We'll see where we go from there. But I think this season is a wrap. Like I would be shocked if they make the second week of the tournament.
The ESPN broadcast from today's game reported that Kim Caldwell told them that Janiah Barker, quote, didn't meet team expectations, and that is why she did not travel to Norman. It's February 22nd for those of you keeping score, and Janiah Barker is in her 4th year of college basketball, as Mitch reminded me, because I thought she redshirted her first year at A&M. 4th year of college basketball, 3rd school. That is where I don't want to make this into a think piece, Mitch, but I don't think that what Kim Caldwell, the reckoning that is about to occur on Rocky Top, I do not think it is out of the ordinary in 2026. If anything, we kind of saw it a little bit with Maryland 2 years ago, a little bit with Brenda. She flipped over almost her entire roster, only had one player returning in Cheyenne Sellers once upon a time. So it's not unprecedented to see a coach go out and over-recruit and basically say, hey, it's been real, it's been fun, but head to the portal because I'm remaking my roster. So it's not entirely unprecedented. I would also tell you that I've had conversations with some coaches where they didn't over-recruit. They did not go out and try to remake the roster knowing that change needed to be made, and it came back to haunt them. And so I'm very interested to see in what direction Kim chooses to remake this Tennessee roster. I'm also very glad this is starting five, item number 5, because you know what it leads into right after this, right, Mitch?
Pure beef.
Oh, yes. The beef. We love the beef here on the Women's Basketball Podcast. By the way, Mitch, I feel like you've got like a couple audio valves open right now, so hopefully that goes away. But if it doesn't, that's okay. We're having fun.
What's going on? What do you hear?
Sounds a little bit like an echo, but now the echo has gone away.
Okay.
Good. And now we're good because it's just in time for this week's beef of the week. For the first time in 3 weeks, the beef does not circle around one Killa Kim Caldwell. It involves the coach who you just finished wrapping up coverage of her game, her team's game, in Coach Yo of Ole Miss. And a lot of different directions we can take with this one, Mitch. We can certainly start with some of the tweets that were percolating around the interwebs from one Coach Yo, the head coach of the Rebels. We can certainly talk about the great piece from CBS Sports that Lindsay plugged last week, that this is an Ole Miss team that spent almost a month on the road because they lost power. The city of Oxford was without infrastructure after that terrible, wacky, once-in-a-generation storm, and how that affected a team that remains in the top 20 and in the mix for a top 16 seed. There's a lot of different ways we can go with this, but since it's the beef of the week, why don't you tell us your thoughts on Coach Yo, her defense of Pete Golding, and in turn slighting one Lane Kiffin?
Yeah, I really I found the back and forth with Lane Kiffin on Twitter entertaining. What I am going to speak to is how the Ole Miss fans reacted to that. They reacted in a way that made me think that they think that Coach Yo has this incredible loyalty to Ole Miss, and that Lane Kiffin is the bad guy. And I know we all like to hate on Lane Kiffin, and he deserves it, right? And that, you know, Coach Yo would never do to them what Lane Kiffin did to them. Folks, Coach Yo and Lane Kiffin have a lot of things in common. Coach Yo does not want to be coaching in Oxford, Mississippi for the entire of her collegiate coaching career. Coach Yo was interested in the SMU job last year and didn't get it. Coach Yo has had a wandering eye for a couple years. Coach Yo, if she gets a call from an SEC job that might open this year, like Texas A&M or Florida, she is answering that call. She is entertaining that thought. So, like, Coach Yo will do to you what Lane Kiffin did to you. She will break your heart. She will potentially go on and coach somewhere else. This is, in coaching circles, like the people that I talk to and stuff, this is like the worst kept secret. Like she's out there. She's about that. Like she's
online too, which is why I can't believe this is her first ever appearance in Beef of the Week.
She's looked around, okay, and she's going to keep looking around. And like she is not someone who is going to live in Oxford, Mississippi for the rest of her life. And she is not going to be someone who's still coaching at Ole Miss in 5 or 10 years. Like, that's just how it is. Like, so like, just be careful, Ole Miss fans, about getting too attached and feeling a certain type of way about Coach Yo and, how that's going to go. What I will also add in, if you're a college football fan, you know who Jimmy Sexton is. Jimmy Sexton is Lane Kiffin's agent. You know who used to represent Coach Yo? Jimmy Sexton. Jimmy Sexton doesn't have a lot of women's basketball clients, but one of his clients, I don't think she still is anymore, but she used to be rep by Jimmy Sexton. So I think if you're someone who's
can I interject my one other question for you about this? So let me read the tweet for those who may have missed it. So Coach Yo tweets out, special thanks to my college football playoff coach, Pete Golding and squad for coming to the game. And then with a video of Lane Kiffin at a celebrity softball game as the underneath video.
That she strikes him out in.
Yes. Wasn't Pete's first game either. Looking forward to supporting our coach that has won a college football playoff game in the fall. Let's say goodbye to the past Rebs, just like I did after striking out Lane Kiffin. Someone quote tweeted it and said, Coach Yo woke up cooking today. Wow. To which she says, nah, he woke up tweeting me and he knows I have the files, so he should stop while ahead. Well, now that you bring in the Jimmy Sexton of it all, I don't think it's the Epstein files. Maybe it's something to do with that. Like that's I didn't know she was rep by Jimmy at some point. So that's where maybe that's the files that she's referring to. Now you're helping me figure out my own web of mess.
But so like, there's a lot of similarities going on there. And I kind of think, like, we've talked about this before, like where we try to, find doppelgangers for women's basketball coaches in college football. And like, I think you and I and Dimitri have joked on, on our text thread, like Coach Yo is the Lane Kiffin of women's college basketball. Like, she likes to get messy on social media. She's not unafraid to say things in press conferences, and has bigger aspirations than Ole Miss. It just is what it is. Now, is she still going to be the Ole Miss coach next year? Maybe not. Like, if someone calls Coach Yo and she thinks it's a better job than Ole Miss, she might go. This is what it is.
I would just like to wrap up this week's Beef of the Week for our audio listening audience who may not be watching on YouTube right now, which if you aren't watching on YouTube, a reminder that you can. OG Triangle Media YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe, you follow, you like, all that good stuff. I am currently wearing an A-Sun hat because I will be calling the A-Sun tournament games in 2 weeks' time. And I also am helping with some of the prep for the various storylines for local media, Mitch. And what did you know when I was doing that this morning? One of those storylines for Jacksonville University. They're primed to be a top 3 seed in the tournament for the first time since Coach Yo left in 2018 to take the Ole Miss job, which is where I do want to give her credit. Like, as much as we talk about the wandering eye, it should be noted, like, she has been there since 2018 and has built that program up. This is not someone who has, quote unquote, been puddle jumping from job to job over the last 7-8 years.
No, but I do think, and yes, she deserves a lot of credit for building Ole Miss into what it has become under her tenure. They've been to the Sweet 16 a couple times now. But yeah, before she got there, they hadn't been to the NCAA tournament since 2007. And now they've gone to 4 straight. And there's a possibility that they might be a top 4 seed for the first time since 1992. And that's
where, if you're her, again, and I don't want to get into a Lane Kiffin think piece conversation, but what else is there left for her to accomplish at Ole Miss?
It's the same kind of thinking, despite Ole Miss's college football playoff run this year, Lane Kiffin did not believe that he could win a national championship at Ole Miss. And I think that you're seeing Coach Yo get to a point where she's thinking, I've taken Ole Miss as far as I can take them in terms of, if I get a top 16 seed this year, I've been to the Sweet 16, I've won NCAA tournament games, but are you going to win an SEC title at Ole Miss? Are you going to go to a Final Four at Ole Miss? I think that's where, like, the calculations are similar. And so if she gets a call from a program that is better resourced, I think it's one of the reasons why she was interested in a job like SMU. SMU has had their struggles this year. We all know that. But SMU has money, real money.
A&M has money, although Joni Taylor may have saved her ass with the good old win over Killa Kim earlier this week. Continue.
I think she did, which I'm going to write about in my notebook at USA Today. But this is coming out after this, so I can just tell you here on this podcast, Joni Taylor and Trev Alberts, the AD at Texas A&M, have had some conversations about putting some more resources into the program. And I think there's a real possibility that they keep her for another year now, especially after now in the last couple games, they've beaten 2 top 25 opponents, Tennessee and Alabama. I think there's a chance that they keep her around for one more year, which would be to the end of her contract next season. And so basically next year would be like, all right, We're going to give you the resources.
It's up to you.
Now it's a prove it year.
I don't know if I've ever seen a post-game. Maybe I have, but like a post-game show. Were you watching that game at all? Okay.
I was tuned into it a little bit on press row at Cameron, but I didn't catch the post-game show.
They go to the studio. I think it was Nell, and I'm forgetting who else was in studio.
My neighbors?
Yeah. And legit, I've never seen two former coaches who are sitting at the desk. Literally, they come back and they start cheering, and they're like, "You all were crapping on Joni Taylor. Joni Taylor." Joni Taylor is not just respected, folks, in the women's basketball
She
world.
is very well liked across coaching circles.
Business world, with what I do in the leadership world. Like, people love her. People in College Station would quite literally do anything for Joni Taylor. And so, yes, the results have not been there. But in terms of the process itself, she has a lot of fans. She has fans across women's basketball. And so, yeah, I think if you start seeing a couple of results here and there, she does stick around. But make no mistake about it. A&M's got money. SMU's got money. Florida has money. Where did Coach Yo coach before she traveled out to Oxford, Mississippi, folks?
And not too far from Gainesville.
File it away. By the way, an honorary runner-up for Beat for the Week / a follow-up to last week's winner of Beat for the Week. Vic Schaefer has issued an apology after saying that his team, quote, had no heart and is the, quote, softest team I've ever had. In hindsight, he says, in part, I don't know that I would do that again with this team, of his post-game comments. So I take that, Mitch, as somebody made it known that, hey, I'm going to go in the portal if you're going to talk to me that way.
Yeah, I'm going to guess that didn't go over well with the locker room. And I was talking to some other reporters here. I'm kind of exhausted by Vic Schaefer. Like every time Vic Schaefer, every time Texas loses a big game, it's never his fault. Never his fault. That's where I'm at.
I love listening. If any of you missed last week's episode with Mitch and Lindsay sitting in for me, please go back and listen to the Beat for the Week, because I was just like cackling away in my car. Like, I was crackling and cackling. I was crackling apart like Vic Schaefer under the pressure of his own locker room. Let's keep it moving. I do want to note, this is not a main event. I just want to mention WNBA, CBA negotiations ongoing. I don't even want to say, like, here's the latest, because I feel like by the time this episode publishes, again, we're recording Sunday afternoon, there will be another twist and turn. The latest is that the league and the players have now agreed to at least the first year of this new CBA. Housing would be provided for all players. Eventually, it would just be developmental players where their housing costs would be covered. I don't even want to get into the nitty-gritty, Mitch, because I think ultimately it could change here in the next hour, let alone the next day, until this episode is published wherever you get your podcast. Instead, I want to just address it by saying this, and something that we do know to be a fact, and it's not going to change. ESPN made the announcement that in lieu of Sunday Night Baseball moving over to NBC, they will be having the women's sports show on Sundays. And that is certainly something that puts pressure, in my opinion, on not just the league, but on the players union. It's not going to be for the same run that Sunday Night Baseball was, which was 12 straight weeks of the summer months. It'll be for 9 Sundays, yet to be announced which 9, yet to be announced if they're all going to be women's basketball. There's going to be some NWSL from what I'm told as well. We don't know who's hosting it yet. Anyone who's listening in Bristol, just a reminder, I am here. I am under contract. I would love to
holler at your girl.
And Mitch will come through too. I'm watching right now. Kelsey Riggs is doing like a pseudo halftime report / podcast with our friend Megan McEwen and Charlie Cream. So like we can do that too. I bring that up though, because not because of my other employer, but because I look at that and the fact that announcement, and this is not with any direct involvement from the league, because it's an ESPN play, which I respect. The announcement and the scoop was leaked to Vanity Fair. It did not come from front office sports. It did not come from awful announcing. It did not come from Marchand. It came from Vanity Fair, because the play is to the growing female sports fan audience and to the moms and the young daughters everywhere out there.
Yeah.
And that's where I think that this is going to put further pressure on the Players Association and the league itself to say, okay, like we've got to come to a compromise because we have to play games. Yeah.
2 things real quick that I would say about that. I think in terms of the actual negotiations, we are finally now in the portion of proposal, counter proposal, responding to proposals. Like I think it's good that there is actually back and forth and dialogue now instead of the Stackmire we were in for 3 months or whatever. So that I think is a good sign, despite like people pushing back on, oh, I can't believe they didn't agree to this, or, oh, how could they propose this? Like, it's the dialogue is good. That's what you want. To the ESPN show, I like this is a really great thing. I think it was Marchand on Twitter who pointed out, like, ESPN has all these women's sports rights. So it makes sense, like in the summer months when you don't have the NFL or college football or college basketball or, after the NBA finals, like, yeah, like you have all these women's sports rights. Like, yeah, like give us a show. They have the WNBA and the NWSL and AUSL coming this summer. So like there's going to be content and there's going to be stuff for them to talk about. And, like I think it's a good thing. Like, sorry to all the Sunday Night Baseball fans out there, but like this is good. This is great.
Let's be real. Angel Reese is back and unrivaled as of last week. And if the Golden Goose, who just went to Miami to ride a boat with Lexi Hull and Aaliyah Boston and the rest of the Indiana Fever, and then get a workout in and didn't actually go to Unrivaled. But if Caitlin Clark is healthy and playing in 2026, of the 9 scheduled shows, you can bet your bottom dollar the Indiana Fever will be one of the featured games in at least 3 of them. That's a third, in my opinion. I'm making that prediction right now, and I don't think it's that bold, Mitch.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Let's keep it moving with this week's Making Money with Mitch. Man, oh man, those Iowa Hawkeyes. Yes, it took nearly 45 minutes into the program for us to get to the Ava Hayden Hive, that exists. We'll get to them here in a second, but they did Mitch wrong this week. They defeated Michigan on Sunday, and so therefore he goes 1-2 with last week's picks. He's got a new 3-pack this week, though, and excited to see who is on the docket in the week ahead, this final week of February.
Yeah, that's okay. We still have a winning record, and I am a very big Ava Hayden fan, so happy to see her do well.
Wait, can we do the Ava Hayden? Ready? 1, 2, 3. I wanted a high five.
Oh, we're high-fiving, yes.
Oh, we're high-fiving. Oh, yes.
Sorry.
For those who don't listen to the show until February, Mitch got to meet Ava Hayden up in D.C. when Iowa defeated Maryland, and when he introduced himself, Ava said what, Mitch?
She gave me a high five instead of a handshake, because I went for the handshake, and she, it was awesome. It was good.
We're going to talk about you in a second, Iowa. Let's get to this week's picks.
Good one for Iowa. Really important. We're going to start off back in the Big Ten with our first pick. Michigan is at Ohio State. This is Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern on Peacock. I think as I've talked about before on this podcast, I don't really believe in Ohio State. And I think Michigan is going to try to bounce back in a big way, especially against a rival. Ohio State is a 1.5-point home favorite. I'm going to take Michigan to cover 1.5.
I would be surprised to see the Wolverines, who both of us did have in our somewhat early Final Four, or our final, I guess I should say, Final Four predictions. We did have Michigan being the surprise in Phoenix amongst the Final Four teams remaining. I don't see them dropping 2 in a row. I think that this is accounting for, hey, you know what? Ohio State has dropped 2 of their last 3. They lost against Maryland. They lost against Minnesota, someone who we probably need to start talking about a little bit more when it comes to being a factor in the Big Ten, not race, but certainly in the Big Ten tournament. And so to that end, I think that that's just the metric saying, and the folks out in Vegas being like, there's no way Ohio State loses 3 out of 4. But I do agree with you. I do think that Michigan wins that game outright, personally, even with it being in Columbus.
Yeah, I agree. Our second game, we're going to go to the SEC. This is Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on the SEC Network Plus. Vanderbilt is hosting Alabama. I think I might be at this game. I might be making a trip to Knoxville with me.
Very nice.
And the Commodores are 6.5-point favorites. I'm going to take the Fighting Michaela Blakeses to cover and win.
While we're on the subject of Vanderbilt, and because I know you had an impassioned post on X about this, Mitch, discussed the Shea Ralph, the the merchant, the free throw shooting merchant that was discussed by some reporters in Nashville with her.
I kind of missed the context around it. I haven't really seen this online. I have to say I'm not deep in Vanderbilt Twitter, so I don't, maybe this was made by some other fan base or something, but I guess people are calling Michaela Blake's a free throw merchant. which I just find kind of weird because she is third nationally in free throws made per game. She's also seventh nationally in field goals made per game. So not really sure where that comes from, but also like, I don't really understand why, I understand like if you want to call, let me think, like what James Harden does a bad thing, like where you're deliberately trying to draw fouls, literally every player. Who's the other guy in the NBA that does that?
LeBron James. I'm just kidding.
I think people accuse Shai Gilgeous-Alexander of doing this sometimes. Is that accurate?
You do? Oh, okay. Interesting. I wouldn't, but okay.
Maybe not. I'm not as plugged into the NBA as I used to be. Anyways, I was just going to say, like, Michaela Blakes is drawing free throws, like, she's going to the basket or she's driving, right? Like, but also, like, I don't think it's a bad thing. And I do think drawing free throws is a skill. And I think that drawing free throws and then making them, like, that's a feature, not a bug, like, of her game. And I remember, people used to say this about Deja Kelly. Deja Kelly was really, really good at drawing free throws and kind of explained it to me, like, you just have to identify, like, who the aggressive defenders on the other team are. And then you have to figure out how to, like, she talked about attacking hips and, like, really getting into defenders that way. And, you have to find, like, sometimes the whistle is not always consistent. Like, so it's just an overall, I think, part of her game. And I don't think a WNBA team or anybody is going to look at Michaela Blakes and be like, oh, she draws too many fouls. Like, what? Like, no, that's a good thing. Like, getting to the free throw line is a good thing. Making free throws is a good thing. So I don't really know where that came from. I just found that all to be very weird, very weird.
I would also say, like, you don't get to a 26.3 points per game average and be the nation's leading scorer solely from hitting the free throw line. Like, right. She's not shooting 26 free throws a game, folks, and then making all of them.
Yeah, like she's fifth nationally in field goal attempts and seventh in field goals made per game. She's also making 3-pointers. Like, I found that all to be very stupid, to be quite honest.
They are 6.5-point favorites at home against Alabama, who has lost 3 of their last 4. The lone win coming at Florida, and one of those 3 losses coming at Texas A&M. So the Crimson Tide leaking oil a little bit, and Vandy, as we speak, currently in a dogfight in Nashville with Kentucky. You'll be curious to see how they either bounce back or build upon it when they host the Tide later this week. And finally, the game that, as we already mentioned, is going to get the college game day treatment. Baylor is at TCU.
Yeah, this is 4:00 p.m. Eastern on Sunday, March 1st. Final regular season game for both teams. Baylor at TCU, ranked unranked matchup. On ESPN, like you mentioned, getting the college game day treatment. TCU is favored by 6.5 points. Despite some of my concerns about TCU and the fact that they're trailing Iowa State right now at halftime, I'm going to take TCU to cover 6.5 and win.
And so to round out Mitch's picks, he's got Michigan, a 1.5-point underdog at Ohio State, Vandy, a 6.5-point favorite at home against Alabama, and TCU Sunday, 4 p.m., a 6.5-point favorite against Baylor in the final regular season game of the 2026 season. I can't believe we're here. March is almost here. And that's where peaking at the right time comes into play. And that is where we begin last call. The storylines that we may have missed throughout the course of today's program. One that we kind of hit, but I want to dive a little bit further into, a massive upset. I don't know, maybe a massive is not the word, but the final score from Iowa City. Yeah. Iowa 62, Michigan 44. I think that the massive adjective comes in, Mitch, to the fact that the Hawkeyes held the Wolverines to 44 total points. Ava Hayden going off the way she did for 24, like that part's not really a surprise. I would say that more so it was the defense for Iowa, and quite frankly, and I texted you this because you were on press row in South Carolina, so I wasn't sure if you had your eyes on this one. Quite frankly, the ugliest game from start to finish of a first quarter that I've seen at any level of basketball this year. I think there were 9 turnovers in the first 6 minutes or something like that. It was absolutely ugly. They cleaned it up. Ava Hayden feasted in the fourth quarter. Could Iowa be peaking at the right time?
Yeah, I was sitting on press row next to ESPN's Michael Vopel, and we were kind of keeping tabs on this game. And kind of joke that, this is what we got out of Duke Carolina last year, that kind of score and that kind of play. But I think, I wrote about this game. I've been doing a weekly watch guide at USA Today, and I led that off with this one because I thought it could show us, two things. Like a Michigan win would have told us, okay, this is a team that is a legit Final Four contender and, contender for a top 4 seed, to go into Iowa and win, especially Iowa's won 3 straight games. For Iowa, what I wrote and what I believe now is this is proof of concept that they have figured out how to win without Taylor McCabe. They've figured it out. It was bumpy when she first went down with her injury. They figured it out. This is proof of concept. So I know it's still a big loss. They're going to miss her in the NCAA tournament, but I think Iowa with this win locks in a top 16 seed. So they're going to host first-round games. So we can talk about Iowa as a Sweet 16 team.
And I think a big reason that the figuring it out for Jan Jensen and friends was putting Taylor Stremlow in the starting 5 and taking Addie Deal out. And that's what is most intriguing to me in terms of the ceiling for this 2025-2026 Iowa team, Mitch, because yes, Addie Deal isn't performing at the same mark that we thought, whether on the bench or in the starting 5 that she did in January, where she's hitting 4 or 5 threes a game as a true freshman. And we're all looking around saying, wow, she really was the princess that was promised, the next heir apparent to Caitlin Clark. And then she laid an egg in her first career start back in her hometown of Los Angeles, or at least close to her hometown. And we're all like, okay, maybe not so much. Putting Taylor Stremlow in the starting 5, even though she only had 6 points on Sunday against the Michigan Wolverines, make no mistake about it, having watched this entire game, the winning plays that she makes are not going to show up in the box score. She can certainly go for double-digit scoring outputs from time to time, but the combination of her and Ava Hayden, the 2 classmates, both sophomores, like Stremlow, I can't even put a finger on like what position she really should be playing. If she's a point guard, if she's a 2, if she's a 3, she's a dog. I'll tell you that much. And it comes across when you watch this Iowa team. And that was the button that Jan Jensen needed to press, I think, to ultimately get this team back to equilibrium.
Yeah, they're cooking right now. I believe in this Iowa team again.
I promised that we would have an Arizona State storyline because, yes, I do have my ASU gear on, but not just because Molly Miller and the Sun Devils are maybe on the bubble and pushing for an NCAA tournament bid, but just because I was there last week on vacation, and also because, yes, Ruby Whitehorn, formerly of Tennessee, is now committed to play for Arizona State next year. What's the latest you can tell us with this commitment, Mitch, and what it means for the Fighting Molly Millers?
Yeah, Ruby Whitehorn, former McDonald's All-American in high school, former All-ACC freshman team selection at Clemson, was at Tennessee, where she was a starter last year and played really well and was one of kind of their key pieces. Now at Arizona State, she was dismissed from the team at Tennessee. We don't want to gloss over this. She had a simple possession of marijuana charge, but that came after she had been arrested for some domestic dispute kind of things. And so, 2 arrests in the span of less than 3 months that got her dismissed from the team. But if she's in a better space now, she can really help this Arizona State team. Like she's a really talented player. And I think Molly Miller, just kind of seeing her talk, she acknowledged Ruby Whitehorn is joining the team. She's already practicing with the team, not eligible to play this year, but will play with the team next year. I think she can really help that situation. And Molly Miller seems to be the type of coach that might be able to get the most out of Ruby Whitehorn. And she talked about, wanting to help young people. That's why she got into coaching. So, I think this is a good fit for Ruby Whitehorn, and I think she's going to help Arizona State, who, like you mentioned, 22-7 this year, just beat Houston on Saturday. But they are still firmly like a bubble team. They need a little bit more help down the stretch to get into the NCAA tournament. They got 2 games coming up that can really help them a lot. They play BYU and then at Texas Tech before going to Kansas City for the Big 12 tournament.
Speaking of the bubble, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here because the A-10, a conference that we have defended steadfastly on this program, taking some L's this week in the Quad 4 department that it's probably going to hurt our prediction that 3 teams from the A-10 would make the NCAA tournament. Is that true, Mitch?
Yes, I unfortunately think that, I think I've said this before, the A-10, what they wanted was for Richmond and Rhode Island to keep stacking wins in the regular season and then have someone like a George Mason or a Davidson win their conference tournament, because you would then have Richmond and Rhode Island in position to get at-large bids. Now, Rhode Island and Richmond still have pretty solid nets and WOBs. They're in the 40s in both, I believe. But they are further down, certainly, than they were before last week. Rhode Island took a loss here recently to, I believe it was, I'm looking at it, LaSalle, which is not great. And that was at LaSalle, but that's still, it's still a quad 4 loss. And then Richmond not only lost on the road at George Mason, which you could deal with that. George Mason's a good team, but then losing at George Washington. Not good, not good at all. Now, I will say that the A-10 did not do Richmond any favors at the scheduling and rescheduling this George Mason game, because Richmond basically had to play 3 road games in 5 days by squeezing that George Mason game in last Monday. So, they didn't do themselves any favors in terms of trying to get, NCAA tournament berths. So we'll see kind of what happens with the A-10. I think the bubble is very much still in flux. The other thing to keep an eye on now is Columbia did sweep Princeton in the regular season. So if Columbia wins Ivy Madness and wins that automatic bid, then I think Princeton is still in position to get an at-large bid. So then you're talking about like that being a bid ceiling situation. You could also have a bid ceiling situation in the Summit League, where North Dakota State is very high up there and in position to get an at-large bid. If they don't win that league, then South Dakota State could come in and and take be a bid stealer. So a lot of flux in the mid majors this week.
How about at the American? You had a chance to watch the top. I don't want to say top ranked, the first place, I should say, Rice Owls when they were on the East Coast. Do you think there's a bid stealing situation to be had in the American?
I don't think so, because unfortunately, despite Rice's 19-game winning streak now after they won at ECU in G Vegas on Saturday, 60-58, their metrics are quite not where like the A-10s are and stuff like that. So they would still need to win their conference tournament to get into the NCAA field. But Rice is another team. They might be, if they win their conference tournament and kind of keep this win streak rolling, they might be like a 10 or 11 seed. If I'm a 7 or a 6, I think I have that right. I don't want to see them in the first round. Like, this is a really solid team, a really good defensive team. They have a player on their team, Haley Adams, who is, I looked this up, the only player in the country this season who is averaging at least 8 points, 11 rebounds, and 3 assists per game. She had 19 rebounds against ECU. So they got a good coach in Lindsay Edmonds, who was an assistant under Wes Moore at NC State for about 8 years. And previously a coach under Kenny Brooks at James Madison as well. And she's somebody who I think could be, if Rice keeps this thing rolling, we'll see what kind of power forward jobs open up. She could be somebody that jumps to the power forward this coaching cycle.
You were in the building for that one. On the subject of the American, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention some other friends of the pod, although a little bit in a negative light. I can't believe we live in a world in 2026, Mitch, where South Florida is 3rd in the American standings and could miss the NCAA tournament, and Florida Gulf Coast is 7th in the ASUN field, although certainly that tournament field is as wide open as any. One bid league, to be sure, but 2 of the bigger powerhouses at the mid-major level potentially could miss the NCAA tournament for the first time in a decade plus.
Yeah, South Florida is something to keep an eye on, because I think if they miss the NCAA tournament, which, if they don't win the American tournament, essentially, I think you could see a coaching search and a coaching change. And, Jose Fernandez left in October, like a week before the season started. So you had to elevate Michelle Baxter Woods. Do I have her name right?
I think
yes.
So.
I think I do, to the head chair. And, despite having a couple of solid wins, they beat Duke in November. it's not been, USF has been the class of the American. So if they don't win the tournament and make the NCAAs, I think you're going to see, this is another factor, new AD, Rob Higgins.
Right.
He's going to want to make his own hire. And so I think that's the situation to watch there.
Florida Gulf Coast, on the other hand, to be fair, this is Raina Harmon's first year. Friend of the pod, of course, was previously at Iowa. And to their credit, they knocked off Eastern Kentucky, who has basically been the number one team in the A-Sun throughout the course of conference play, although they're now fading and perhaps not peaking at the right time. But Florida Gulf Coast, unfortunately, fell to Jacksonville on Saturday, who now has won. Yes, again, I'm going to say it again, just because, Coach Yo, we want to show you we do love you. Jacksonville has won 9 games for the first time since Coach Yo departed in a row. Again, say something nice about Coach Yo. We got you.
Right.
We got you, girl. Another favorite character on this program, the product, Keomi McMiller, excuse me. I don't know how we keep having this scenario where Penn State either wins games that are like they should win, like they beat Rutgers, and we get an NCAA women's basketball graphic for the product. Listen, we enjoy her on this podcast for the content of it, but I just, even when they lose, we get oh wow, she dropped 34, she dropped 27, and I just want to make sure we address that because it's happening again, Mitch.
Yeah, they have 3 Big Ten wins this year?
But I feel like we've had more graphics for her than any other player on the Eastern Seaboard who plays in the Big Ten, which is really only 3 or 4 schools, but still.
Yeah, Penn State, that's a situation to watch.
Circle it, folks. That's why a lot of you listen to this show. Let's pivot over to the professional ranks. Mitch, of course, doesn't only cover women's sports for USA Today. He is also tapping his toe a little bit into the water of NASCAR, and of course is a big NASCAR fan. So I did want to shout out our friend Sophie Cunningham, who, she's as polarizing a figure as there is in women's basketball. She loves Arby's, evidently, and Arby's loves NASCAR. So she was at Atlanta Speedway over the weekend. And so shout out to Sophie. Always be marketing, girl.
Yeah, hanging out with Carson Hocevar, and which is funny to me because you talk about 2 of the biggest drinksters in their respective sports.
Party gals, party folks.
Yeah. So, but she had on the meat jacket for Arby's, and I think said something to the effect of "Hot girls eat Arby's." Sophie Cunningham hanging out at a NASCAR race. And it was funny, the guy who was interviewing her actually had a Indiana Fever t-shirt on under his CW gear or whatever. Anytime my worlds collide with NASCAR women's basketball, I always love that.
Sophie, who is not technically under contract with the Indiana Fever next year, of course, she's one of the many pending free agents across the W, was not a part of the team workout that took place at Coral Gables at the University of Miami over the weekend. In case you missed that reference earlier, Caitlin Clark was in South Florida, did not attend Unrivaled. Sometimes co-host of this podcast, Rebecca Kopelman, was hoping for a masked singer situation, Mitch, where, maybe Caitlin was going to be dressed up as someone else and then take her costume off and reveal that she was actually subbing in Unrivaled. Was not the case. Was just on the party boat and at the workout while Sophie was up in the ATL. But speaking of Unrivaled, probably a good place to wrap up last call. Rakea Jackson did make her return to the floor after the unfortunate and god-awful altercation that occurred with her former boyfriend, James Pierce of the Atlanta Falcons. And a lot of players spoke out just about Rakea's courage. She stressed how much basketball means to her, that it is her safe place, it is her happy place. And so very, very happy to see Rakea back on the floor. Yeah,
and I believe just kind of in relation to that incident, she is kind of, basically told the court she's willing to testify against him. Boy, that's going to get messy.
Yeah, but we're glad she's okay because obviously with a car being rammed into her car while she was
a lot of courage to do that.
Yeah. So we want to commend Rakea Jackson and looking forward to seeing her not just in the stretch run of Unrivaled here as we head into March, but also back on the floor in the W in the coming months. Mitch, what is your schedule this week? What games will you be covering the final week of the regular season in the Power Fours?
Like I said, I think I'm going to Nashville and I'm going to go see Michaela Blakes and Aubrey Galvin and Shea Ralph and Co. in person against Alabama. So I'm going to be at that game. And then I think I will be at Duke Carolina Part 2 on Monday. And then I believe the week after that, I will be spending a whole lot of time in Greenville, South Carolina at the SEC tournament.
Very nice. We will be back before you head to Greenville for conference tournament week. Yours truly will be headed out to Indianapolis tomorrow. That's part of why we are recording this podcast on Sunday afternoon, plus to literally give you our real life, in the moment reactions to some of the games going on right now. By the way, as we're recording, Kentucky up by 2 in Nashville over the Commodores. So file that one away. It's in the third quarter to give you some context as we're recording this show. I'm going to be at the NFL Combine for the next few days. Then I'll be back for regular season finale of the River City Rumble. Women's game is on Friday. Like I said, JU, one of the longer win streaks in women's basketball. They will host North Florida on Friday. And then the men's game Saturday. And then conference tournament kicks off here in Jacksonville next Tuesday, not this Tuesday, the next Tuesday. But hey, we're going to talk to you well before then. We've got to get Mitch on the road. Again, he is live in Columbia, South Carolina.
I have one more thing.
Oh, he has one more. Yes, let's hit it.
Texas A&M won again today.
They did?
They beat Arkansas 78-57. Texas A&M has a winning overall record now.
Joni Taylor.
I think Joni's safe.
Justice for Joni. So. Nell Fortner, Mia O'Brien, Mitch Northam, we are all cheering because Joni Taylor will get another year. Will it be enough? Because they've got money out there. Texas Tech, we had them on the hot seat out there, that coaching staff, and they got some money out there in Lubbock. And much like their football team and the men's basketball team, they were able to translate that into an NCAA tournament season in 2026. We will see what happens for Joni Taylor and friends in the SEC tournament and in this final week of regular season play. Anything else, Mitch, before we get out of here?
I'm good.
Let's get you on the road. You got to get home to your young child. He's Mitch. I'm Mia saying we will catch you next week.
Deuces.